and gentlemen. I am your host, Audrey A. Thomas, attorney at law, and I'm in the studio with my co-host, Javian Forbes. We just played in honor of Steve Metcalf, who's my regular co-host, who's not here today, his dub plate. And I have our guest host, Miss Siobhan Andrews. Hello.
Hello. Hi, Miss Audrey, and everybody out there.
Hello, Javian.
Hello. Thank you for pointing out that I'm not Steven.
Javian is here because he's not Steven.
I'm not.
Thank you, Javian. He's not 16 either, ladies and gentlemen.
Or 32.
Or 32. We found out that he's 24. But he's very smart. So he could be 32, intellectually.
Yeah, whatever.
Ladies and gentlemen, I asked my good friend Siobhan Andrews to be here because I wanted her to keep me grounded. As you know, I have very, very colorful opinions on race, ethnicity, gender, sexual preference. And oftentimes when I'm doing a show that's potentially controversial, I'll have someone who can keep me anchored so I don't get myself in trouble.
And that's what I'm here to do.
Yes. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the theme for this evening is make your second chance their first impression. As you know, we do the show as a way to empower you in your decision-making process. This particular segment is also being recorded because we've asked our good friends over at CTVN1.com, CTVN1.com, to come into the studio and record this segment because we want it to be shared with the general public repeatedly. I think, and you know, I think myself amazing, and my favorite person is me. And I think that what we have to say tonight is just that important. So we want it to be played repeatedly. Do you agree?
Yes, you are very important. And if Steven was here, it would be even better, but I guess we'll have to settle today.
We'll have to settle. And of course, we have our amazing engineer, Richard. Good evening, Richard. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for holding us down.
Well, you're quite welcome, Audrey.
Ladies and gentlemen, the theme, extremely important. You should write it down and post it on your wall. Make your second chance their first impression. Before I jump in and start talking about the theme, I want to explain to you my basis for it, right? The theme, make your second chance their first impression, simply says you can't go back and change what you did yesterday, but you can certainly do something new today that trumps what occurred yesterday. Buddha said that every time you awaken, you're reborn. So that's your chance to start living life anew. And I agree with this. And the reason why I say make your second chance their first impression is because, as Siobhan and I were discussing in the car, people remember the first and the last. So if the last thing you do is greater than the thing you've done before, they're most likely to use that as their first impression, because the human mind is very fickle and we move on very quickly.
That's the truth.
Isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Now, what are your thoughts on the theme, Javian?
I think the theme it's great, but I think it could just as easily be summed up as don't screw up your second chance and make a good second impression.
Can Richard, can he say screw up on the air? Okay, go ahead.
Oh, good, because it was going to get worse. But, it's clear. It's really easy to understand. You have your first impression, which sometimes goes very badly. And I think we've all had a bad first impression with someone we've met or something we've done. And then sometimes you get second chances. And a lot of times we're very put off because we already made such a bad first impression. But we're given a second chance, and it's up to us to really take advantage of that and not let our prior mistake force us into making another one that's probably greater, because this is your second chance. And if you mess that one up, there probably won't be a third.
That's really true. Siobhan, what is your thoughts on the theme?
Well, I definitely believe in second chances. I believe that we're all not perfect, and we're entitled to a second chance.
Absolutely. And ladies and gentlemen, let me just say this to you. I always assume that I'm going to need people, right? And I always assume that our paths will cross again. And the second time it crosses, I may be on the other side of the table. So I treat people the way how I would want them to treat me in the event I wasn't acting right, right? And today my son Sean and I, good evening, Sean Patrick Coy, I love you very much. and I'm very proud of you. Today we were talking, and he was telling me how this woman who tried to cheat him, after he resolved the issues that they were facing, she then came over to him and said, can I please ask you to give me a ride? And Sean Patrick said, Mommy, I wanted to push her down, but I didn't. But I did not give her a ride. I drove off. And I said, son, you should have. And he said, why, Mommy? She tried to cheat me. I said, because your deliverance, your breakthrough, your blessing may come in the hands of your enemy. If you turn your enemy away, you may give up the opportunity that is being presented to you. Oftentimes, you have to love people who don't deserve it because the life you're saving is truly your own.
Yes.
Well, it's always good to be the bigger person. And it's always good.
Is that kind of some kind of fat reference? Because,
Did I say the bigger person?
yeah, you did.
Well, I meant the bigger person as in the bigger morally and
Oh,
intellectual.
okay.
I could have said the better person also.
You probably should.
It's always good to be the more moral human being. And in that case, your son, if he had taken a moment, because right now he probably regrets it.
Yes, he does.
Because I think we've all been mean to someone in the past, even if they deserved it, quote unquote. We ended up regretting it because we sat down, we cooled off, and we thought about it, and we figured, okay, it isn't always two wrongs don't make a right. So if you had just given her the ride, maybe she'd have went home, sat down, and thought to herself, maybe I shouldn't have tried to cheat him. So it's always good to be the better person.
The better person.
For yourself and for the person you're doing it for, because you really are doing something for them and not just for yourself. You're not just proving that you're better than them.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times I think that being a good human person, oftentimes we do things because we're taught to. But being a good human person isn't about trumping the other person. It's about showing mercy whenever possible. Because you are imperfectly made, but your love can be perfected in the sense that the impression you leave the person with is that, wow, they could have done this, but they chose not to. And people will never, ever, ever focus on what you've done for them. But I promise you, they will hold on eternally to what you've done to them. So you want to make sure that as you're acting against a person's interest, you realize that you're foreclosing any possibility of securing an ally later on. Am I right?
Yes, you are. Yes.
And now, Siobhan and I have been friends since 1990. We haven't seen each other since 95.
Yes.
And I was able to hit her up on Facebook and ask her to join me today. And she didn't think twice. Clearly, whatever second chances I had was a good first impression.
Yes, it was.
Now, I can talk all night. So if either of you have anything else to say before I proceed, let me know.
Speaking of 1990,
This is not cool. Go ahead and say it, Javian.
1990 was a good year.
How old were you in 1990, Javian?
I turned 1. But for the majority of 1990, I was a few months old.
Thank you.
But it was a very good year. A lot of good stuff happened that year.
You're not a nice kid.
I can make a better second impression.
Yes, I think you will. So, my thought is this. You don't know where life is going to take you. I always talk about the Honorable Justice Evelyn Laporte, who Tears recently honored during the first empowerment seminar. She was my super senior when I started the DA's office, and then my direct supervisor. And after I left the DA's office and opened my own practice, I walked into court one day and she's sitting on the bench. My path, although it went in a different direction than hers, continuously crosses her path.
Yes.
If I had been a nightmare to deal with when I was a subordinate to her, do you really believe that she would have shown us the honor and the privilege of coming out to join Tears Inc. when we said we wanted to honor her? It would not have happened. And I can sit here tonight and name hundreds of scenarios where I had been involved in some relationship, personal, professional, familial, with a person, lost touch with them, and then ended up in a situation where clearly I was thankful that I was a kind, decent human person. And I'm saying this because we're going to talk in detail about race in this country. And we're going to talk about it because of Donald Sterling. But I'm not saying that Donald Sterling is the racial problem in America. You know, he's not the problem. He's right now the poster child on how to address the problem. But he's not the problem. The problem started in 1867, right?
Yes.
And it continued from 1867 to 1965. But it is now 2014. And I believe, in my humble opinion, that our analysis needs to be different. It can't be what it was in 1965. That's no longer necessary. People who are brown and black-skinned are not second-class citizens. They're not victims. They may still be targeted, but they're no longer victims because the laws have made certain of that. And it's time that we start to recognize that the laws have changed. We cannot be angered. A person who's making the salaries that the NBA players are making cannot be angered and diminished by some snide comment that a 81-year-old man makes to his young girlfriend because he's jealous and feeble. You can't, because you're no longer in a state of victimhood. You're now in a state of, oh, he targeted me. How am I going to remedy this? Right? It's a total different scenario.
Right, and they refuse to be victimized. I think if we all look at what happened to Donald Sterling, it's pretty clear that they aren't victims. The Clippers players are not victims. Donald Sterling, he probably feels like a victim at this point because he's basically lost his franchise, and if he's directly involved with it, the franchise itself will probably die.
It's over for him. It really is. And
I mean, let's not
it's over for him.
put that in
He's
his tombstone
80
just yet.
years old.
He's still very
It's
rich.
over for him. No matter. Let me just say this. Although my grandma is 87 and I don't think it's over for her. I want to recant that statement. It's not over because he's 80. It's over for him because the relevance that his racist thought process has diminished. Right? When I'm sitting in a courtroom and a white officer comes over to me and says, the front row is for attorneys only, I take out my attorney's ID and I show it to him, and he goes about his merry way. I am not offended and I don't feel victimized because I am an attorney. And it's his job to make sure that the people who are in the front rows are attorneys. Now, what I will do is I'll make a mental note and I'll watch as other attorneys come and sit there. And if he fails to say to the white people that come and sit next to me, the front rows for attorneys only, I don't address it with him because he's not my concern. He's not. Do you know what I do? I'm a member of the Bar Association, KCCBA. Hey, Jay Schweitzman. I would file a complaint with them and let them address it and let them reach out to the requisite persons for them to deal with why this officer, ID number 22259, did what he did, and let him explain. And I never have to deal with this personally, so he can never attack me personally because he doesn't know who filed the complaint. And I guarantee you, when he's called to task, he will never do it again. Because now he knows the next time you do this, it's not going to be good. But the reason why I don't blow up on him is because I remember there was a congressman that was entering City Hall, and a white police officer tried to stop him to check his guests and searched him, and he went off because he assumed it was racially motivated. Well, the white officer backed down, let the congressman and his guests in, and when they got into City Hall, the guests killed the congressman because he had a gun. Had the congressman allowed the officer to do his job, he would still be alive today. And the fact that they made him lay in wait in City Hall has no comforting effect for his mother and other loved ones who will never ever see him again. Do you understand? So for me, you cannot let your knowledge of the past guide your future. You have to let your second chance be their first impression. I have a second chance to prove that race relations in America is not what it used to be, and that I no longer have to have the concerns that Brown, who sued the Board of Ed, had, because I have the access that her lawsuit provided. Do you understand? It's very different. Until we are willing to speak intellectually and objectively about issues concerning race, issues concerning sexuality, issues concerning gender, we're always going to be angry. And anger does not solve problems. It really doesn't.
So let's try and speak calmly and be thoughtful. I don't think you're implying that things are equal.
No, separate can never be equal, and all things will never be equal.
Right.
The access that I have, you won't have because you're not an attorney. The access that my children have, your children may not have because you're not an attorney. But there are other things that balances out, right? It's not a situation where, only the rich and the people with certain degrees are going to make it. We all have equal access. Equal access does not mean equality. It's never going to be equal. Equality is not sameness. Because if you have complete sameness, then you have nothing to strive for.
Right, but I don't think you're talking about equal results. I think we're talking about equal opportunity. And I think a lot of people would argue that opportunity right now is not equal. Because a lot of younger children, poor minorities, poor whites and poor blacks and poor Hispanics and poor Asian children are not being very well served by their schools or their communities. And so things aren't necessarily equal because their opportunities are, from that point, are diminished for the rest of their lives. And I think it's not necessarily, while I don't disagree with what you're saying entirely.
You shouldn't disagree at all, JVN.
Ms. Thomas.
Yes, sir.
What I was saying was, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying in that we should all refuse to be victimized and we should all use the tools that are available to us to right the wrongs that are done to us. Not everyone has the same set of tools. And of course, you said that yourself, that not everyone has the same set of tools. But I think what we're asking now is, are the scales, on average, are those scales in any way balanced?
I would say yes, only because I've been on both sides. What are your thoughts, Bonnie?
Well, I think that hopefully one day we all will be equal, but I really think this is what we was talking about being perfect. And
right.
People, we are not perfect.
Right.
So we're always going to have people that will, have different opinions about each other, and it's not going to be an equal thing for us where we have to make a stand, and we have to just not take it personal,
Absolutely. And one of the things that I want to point out, if you're just tuning in, I'm Audrey Thomas, attorney at law. This is the Empowerment Hour on 93.5 FM radio. Our theme for this evening is make your second chance their first impression. And the reason why I'm saying this to you is that when you back a person into a corner, you put them on the defensive. And people who are on the defensive can't see what they're doing wrong because they believe in their head that they're being victimized and that they're justified in their reactions. What I'm saying is that there's another way that you can get the exact result you're seeking. We need to put things in perspective. Jim Crow has been the law from 1867 to 1965. So the people who were adults in 1965 can remember when. And if the things that occurred after 1965 tip the scales against their favor, you can't be astonished or shocked to know that they have some ugly views, right? Yes. Because if you were in a position of power and suddenly they took it away, you'd be outraged too. The question that you need to address is, one, how do we find a way to live in unity? How do we agree to disagree without destroying each other? Yes. How do we avoid Watts? How do we avoid these types of scenarios, right? How do we find a way to discuss the issues of race and to address the concerns of all the citizens of this great country without pointing the finger? Because oftentimes pointing the finger doesn't solve problems. What I'm afraid of is the impact the anger is going to have on the children. Because especially young black children, right? I have some. And I know that if you tell a young black child that no matter what they accomplish or how successful they become, whether they're an NBA star, that racial profiling and targeting and hateful speech is going to be an impediment to their happiness, then what do you leave them to strive for? What?
I think that's all about framing. Because on the one hand, you could tell their children that there are people actively trying to keep you down. And there are a few people like that out there. Or you can frame it in a way that says, they're out there right now, there are a few people that are trying to keep you down, that are stepping on the ladder while you're trying to climb up. But when you get to the top, if you're able to get to the top, despite all of that, then you know you've made it because of your own ability and your own skills and your own determination and your own hard work. So
precisely. And one of the things that I had to contend with, I'm an affirmative action baby, right? And so people would say things in my present like, as if they want to say to
Right.
me, I don't deserve to be here. And so I developed the statement, who I know might have gotten me here, but only what I did kept me here. And that's what I've told my children. Who you know may get you there, but what you do will keep you there, right? And if you can do this, if you can adapt that principle, then you're always going to be comfortable in your space. You might have gotten the internship because your mommy's an attorney, but you will get the job because of what you did during the course of the internship, right? You might be on the empowerment hour because Ms. Thomas thinks you're an amazing young person with excellent abilities.
who still isn't Steven?
But the only thing that will keep you on the empowerment hour is the performance that you give week after week, right? Otherwise, you'll be invited to leave. And that's not a threat.
Steven, help.
Yes.
But anyway.
So, Siobhan is here because she's Miss Thomas's friend, but also she's here because she's capable in her own rights, right? She has opinions that she has expressed to Miss Thomas that were deemed valid by Miss Thomas, that were deemed worthy of sharing with Miss Thomas's audience. And the judgment call on Miss Thomas's part was made because of who Siobhan is and what her capabilities are. People always say, what's wrong with a little nepotism? Tell me. What's wrong with it? What's wrong with opening doors for those who are important to you? As long as you're not closing doors for others and you're giving equal opportunity, there's nothing wrong with it. My thought is, as long as there's some way to regulate this type of decision-making process, right? Like, for example, it's okay for me to have Siobhan and Javian here, but think about it. If I had a radio show that hired or employed thousands of people and every single person that worked there looked exactly like me, that would be a problem, right?
Yes.
That would be a problem.
Right.
So what we need to do is we need to keep things in perspective. We need to think about what the discussion should be. And we need to be careful that we don't corrupt the children. In the days of Socrates, you went to prison for impiety and or corrupting the youth. You may even be sentenced to death. And I think in today's world, we're not really very concerned with our impact on the children.
Speaking for the children, on their behalf, in my capacity as a 16-year-old, the children are never as involved as they should be in these discussions. And I think one of the reasons for that is because, of course, they don't think they're very bright, but also that there's a feeling that your children will disagree with you because they grow up in a very different time. They're exposed to very different things. And a lot of times adults dismiss their opinions outright because they're younger, but mostly I think it's because they disagree with them. And, of course, children seem young and reckless, and their opinions seem not very well formed, but they're coming from a very different perspective. Excuse me. So Jim Crow ended technically in the 60s. Technically. And since ever since then, each succeeding generation has grown up in a slightly different set of circumstances where Jim Crow is less and less, and the shadow of Jim Crow is fading little by little by little as you go further out. So if you're doing this for the children, you should always involve them in some capacity, But also, you should keep in mind that they're growing up in a very different time, and they're growing up with very different circumstances. Like you said yourself that you have benefited from affirmative action.
I certainly have a lot.
So I'm sure I have in some capacity also. But
It's not as relevant to
Right.
you as it was to me.
and people right now, people made snide comments to you that you don't belong here, you don't deserve this, etc., etc. Right now, no one would say that to me
Right.
because that's not politically correct anymore, and they know that if they were to say that, then I could obviously challenge them on it, because at some point someone said, "Isn't a legacy admission just affirmative action for people who their parents have come here?"
Yes. And I don't want that abolished, because now that I've acquired 5 degrees, I want the legacy admission for my children. Do you see why I'm saying make your second chance their first impression? Siobhan, when we return, I'm going to have you state your opinion, because we have to take the break. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host, Audrey Thomas, attorney at law. 877 Law Nerd is the website, 877lawnerd.com to be specific. The website for Thomas Empowerment Hour radio show is actually tehrs.com, and Richard seems to want me to get off the air, so run your track.